Today I want to go further with complexity theory and look at how we might use computer simulations in order to study those patterns in the chaos. And the particular approach I'm going to take today is to look at agent-based modelling. And it's called agent-based modelling because it uses computer programs that simulate individuals who are interacting with their immediate neighbours according to certain rules, and it's possible then to look at how social patterns across larger areas, larger groups of people or larger groups of agents develop as individuals make interactions with their immediate neighbours. It's probably best if I give you an example, and the example I'm going to use today is a program drawn from a library of agent-based models, and it simulates bees looking for a place where they can swarm, where they can establish their colony, establish their hive. They're looking for a hive where they can live and be productive. And what they're going to do is, starting from being homeless, they're going to, each bee acting individually is going to contribute to an overall pattern of behaviour. Let's imagine the computer program. It defines a space in the middle of which is a swarm of bees, and around the bees there are a number of possible locations for those bees to set up their colony. That's one of the variables that we're going to take into consideration, the number of places. And each place is assigned a certain quality between 0 and 100. And what's going to happen is each bee, we're concentrating on the behaviour of bees that are scouts. They're going to go out and search the location on behalf of the colony. By the way, the second variable that we're looking at then is the quality of places. And setting out, a scout bee is going to move around at random in the space until, through good fortune or luck, they strike a possible place for the hive to move. So scouts are sent out. Some of them bump into potential homes for the colony of bees. Some of them don't. Some of them just carry on wandering around for a while. There's a period over which the scouts are just out looking at random for different places where they might find a hive. Let's say that's the third variable we're looking at, the length of time for search. Now when when one of these scout bees finds a hive, it inspects the quality of the space that it's looking at, and then it returns to the main swarm. And when it gets to the main swarm, it does a little dance to indicate what it has found. The dance is called a wiggle dance, It indicates the direction in which they've found the hive that is a potential home, and the enthusiasm with which they dance indicates what they think about the quality, what they think they're communicating to the bees, both where the fact of the matter, here's a place I've found, come and have a look at it, and according to the intensity of the dance, how enthusiastic they are about it. And that appears on the programme as a small wiggle dance, and when they've done the wiggle dance, they go back to the hive that they have located. And depending on how enthusiastic they were, a number of other bees will follow them. A number of the other scout bees will follow them. So now there'll be 3, 4, 5 bees here inspecting the hive. And each of those bees will make their own judgment, and each of them will go back to the main body of the bees, do a wiggle dance, do another wiggle dance here. Each of them, depending on how enthusiastic they are, there'll now be a traffic of bees between that potential home and the swarm, communicating the quality of that hive. And the last thing is that as the bees return, if one bee is travelling backwards and forwards several times, it becomes less enthusiastic in its wiggle dance. It becomes less animated as time goes by. You can imagine, I mean, to anthropomorphise bees, you can imagine it getting fed up with telling the bees that it's found a great place. You say, I've told you 5 times, it's a great place. If you haven't heard me by now, I'm not going to spend any more time telling you. So you can see that there's a rate at which the enthusiasm drops off. So that might be another variable. And over the course of time, there will be a stream of bees backwards and forwards between 2 or 3 potential hives, and eventually the majority of it's a kind of democratic bee democracy. It's a kind of democratic process whereby collectively the bees arrive at a decision. Gradually they narrow down to focus on just 2 or maybe 3 hives, even if they've encountered others on the way. And eventually, when the bees see that they've got a third of the scouts or 20% of the scouts, they've got a quorum of bees located on one hive, then they do something that is called piping. I don't know exactly what piping is, but I think it's a kind of a noise that bees make. So they start piping, and once the bees start piping, they say that's a signal the decision's been made. Wherever the majority of bees are now just settled on, that's where we're going to go. And then collectively, all the swarm goes off to find the hive that has been settled upon by these scout bees. Now, that's the basis of the program. But because it's a simulation, we've got very simple rules, we've got a number of variables that we can look at, and we can run it again and again, and you will see, if we run it again and again, that certain patterns begin to appear in the behaviour of the bees. They will always settle eventually on a hive. It will not necessarily be the best hive. You can start thinking now about how this maps onto your experiences of human behaviour, in the sense that if a suboptimal hive starts attracting attention, it can build up a momentum so that even if the best hive is located later, there's not time enough to build up the sense of group connection to that new hive as a kind of first mover advantage of being in there early with, this is my suggestion, this is a good hive, take this one, let's stop searching, it's good enough, let's settle on this one. And so they don't always choose the best hive, but we can now start to think, if we adjust the number of hives, how much choice do we give them? If we give them a choice between 2 hives, they're more likely to choose the best one than if we give them a choice between 10 hives. If we adjust the quality of the places, or if we hide the best one behind the inferior one, are they more likely to hide it? We can start to study how the patterns of these choices emerge without any kind of overall plan. Each individual operates separately on its own account, and it contributes to a group decision. If you set the quorum too high, they perhaps never reach a decision, because by the time 50% of the bees are going backwards and forwards, they're beginning to lose enthusiasm. So setting the quorum high will make it much slower for them to arrive at a decision, but will it affect the quality of the decision? All of these things we can look at by adjusting the parameters in the computer program and running it again and again, because the patterns we're looking for are patterns in the complexity, not patterns just about one operation of the bees. It's collectively, over periods of time, if they did it again and again, how effective would they be, and which of these variables affect the speed and the coming to the right decision of those bees. So let me show you now the program itself and watch it running to see how those bees sort out and select the place where they're going to live for themselves. Here you can see the swarm of bees at the centre of the picture, and 10 hives or potential homes around, and the scout bees are setting out to investigate the territory. They move at random, they have no particular purpose until they hit on a potential future hive. Here's one at the top, 12 o'clock on the diagram there. The colour changes to white, to red or to green, the different colours indicating the homes that the scouts have found. Then, after spending a short time assessing the quality of the hive that they've come across, they will return back to the swarm and convey their information with a wiggle dance. There's a small circle appears on by the swarm to show that the wiggle dance has been performed. The colour indicates the particular hive that they're pointing towards, and now you can see random motion is almost completely disappeared. What is happening is now mainly purposeful action, as bees that have found a hive go backwards and forwards, communicating to fellows where they have found. And you can see the activity is now becoming purposeful. Numbers going backwards and forwards. That hive at about 4 o'clock is obviously attracting a lot of activity. The focus of the attention of the bees is now pretty much reduced to the 2 hives, one at 4 o'clock, one at 6 o'clock. They're, by the way, the 2 highest quality, the 100 and the 75 rating. Though there are a few bees still going to other hives, you can see that the majority of traffic is building up between the white and the blue. It's now only a fairly small step for a quorum to be achieved. It looks most likely to happen to the white hive, that is at 4 o'clock. hive at 8 o'clock still seems to be able to attract a number of participants, but it's really all over apart from the final decision. No one has started piping yet, but that can only be a short while away. The level of activity on the white hive is now substantially more than anything else that is going on elsewhere. And this is a typical pattern that after a short time the activity of the bees becomes very purposeful, focuses on 2, perhaps 3 hives while they sort out which is the most favourable position to move on to, and then finally they make up their minds and settle. They're about now to swarm on the white hive and the thing will be over. This pattern produced, remember, by individual bees following particularly simple rules, and the overall effect being to produce group behaviour that arises from the individual behaviour but is not strictly determined by it. Here I'm running it again, but slightly faster. Now that you know what we're looking for, you can see the individuals going after different hives, communicating the idea, the quality of the hive back. And in this occasion, look, it's the blue hive at about 10 or 11 o'clock that is attracting most attention. Even though it's not the best hive is the white one, which is about 7 o'clock. The white one is attracting more attention, but it's not quick enough to compete with the blue hive, which has the first mover advantage and the focus of activity. And here they are, they're now going to swarm. Well, that's what I think is possible in the way of using computer-based simulations for studying complexity and studying patterns in the complexity. And I want you to think, was this a reasonable metaphor for some of the choices that we face as human beings? Think of, you're deciding to go to a movie and your friends are recommending different movies and they're extolling the virtues of going to see Oppenheimer rather than Barbie, or this kind of movie rather than that kind of movie, or the location where the movie is being shown. They'll be trying to persuade you, and you'll be trying to weigh up from the enthusiasm they show in their recommendation which movie you're going to go and look at. Is that the kind of... Can this model of the bees serve as a metaphor for this kind of decision that we make every day, where we're influenced by people around us in a rather uncertain way, but where certain patterns will start to emerge if we think about this perhaps even more important questions in our lives, choosing a career, making educational choices. How many choices of career did I consider before I decided to become a teacher? There's a cost to searching and checking and finding out what's going on in each area. There's a cost of taking into account more places. There's a cost in terms of investigating the places and the length of time spent on them. All of those things add to the difficulty, and so we, like the bees, use a system which cuts down some of the choices, which makes it possible to arrive at a choice from the vast range, and so patterns start to emerge from the way that we are interacting with our environment, the way we're signalling and receiving signals about the quality of activities that we're going to be engaged in. And in case you think, obviously, this is a metaphor, it's not a precise model. What we're doing is setting up an abstract model that we'll test to see whether it shows aspects of patterns that we can also observe in everyday life. If you think that human life is too varied and too precious to be able to quantify in this way, let me recommend to you a TED talk by Professor Hannah Fry, and Professor Fry talks about the mathematics of love. She's talking about issues like this, selecting a life partner and the patterns in behaviour that can be described mathematically in order to understand better what people are doing. Not that they're necessarily computing everything in their heads, they're not necessarily doing calculations any more than the bees are necessarily doing explicit calculations, but they're following some kind of algorithm, and this process of looking at an abstract model can help us to understand what the interactions of the different parts of that process are. In the words of Robert Cowan, we can see the patterns in the chaos, that it no longer looks like a random chaotic mess to us. We're beginning to see certain patterns. Now, if you're convinced by this, and I hope you might be, then we can start thinking about whether we could, as biologists have done for the bees, whether we could custom build a model that more explicitly dealt with particular educational choices, particular life choices that we make in relation to education. And it's a step away from direct empirical observation. It's stepping back to think about abstraction first, and once you've imagined what the abstraction looks like, to see whether you can find matching patterns in real life that are in some way illuminated by the process of modelling. So that's agent-based modelling. It's not the only possible way of simulating in computing terms. It's got certain attractions. It was first used for modelling flocks of starlings and the way they swirl and swoop in the sky, even though each individual starling is only responding to their immediate neighbours. So that's an attractive sort of model, but it's by no means the only model that could be used. I've elsewhere used John Conway's Game of Life as a possible metaphor for managing and understanding comparison. So the point about this is, it's not just about going out and asking people what they think they're doing. It's about thinking what they could be doing, thinking about modelling it, and then seeing whether that model in any way corresponds to behaviour that we can observe in real life. So that's I hope, something that will be stimulating for you in the way that you think about possibilities of research in looking at educational choices and how people behave.